and we love the fact that you hang out with us right here on the Simon Conway Show. Interesting guest right here. I'm talking with Phil Crowley at this point. And if you don't know the name right now, you're going to want to remember this name because he's got some information that is very interesting for you. He's a dedicated attorney, been handling legal matters for pharmaceutical, biomedical, medical devices, IT, and other technology companies for over 30 years. He's spent nearly 25 years in the Board of Trustees of the Stevens Institute of Technology, and he joins me on the LaMarca Law Group Newsmaker line. Phil, good afternoon. Happy Independence Day weekend to you, sir. How are you today?
I am fine, Doug. I'm very happy to be with you. Good afternoon, and I hope that you have and are planning for a wonderful holiday weekend.
Starts off with golf tomorrow morning, so 18 holes of torture, and I'll be ready for the weekend off after that. Hey, you know what? We had good news in the employment markets today. They said nearly 5 million jobs are created. They were looking for only less than 3 million, and so that blew that completely out of the water. A lot of people are still on edge about a post-coronavirus economy, a lot of working from home, but also there are also people that are worried about whether a robot is going to be taking over their job here in the future. I guess that's the biggest question. Did the coronavirus and the post-corona economy, did that change your outlook on this, or is this something that you've been pretty steady Eddie as far as you've been looking at this?
Well, I've been pretty steady on this, Doug, because if you look back in history, and I think it's always useful for us when we become concerned about some new development, to look back in history, because there are few things that are completely novel. And technology development has been with us for centuries. There have been stories that the factory workers in the old days, in the 1700s, were so upset with the mechanization of some of the processes that they tried to sabotage the equipment so that they would be able to preserve their jobs. But if you think about it, who would want to go back to a society that was done with handwork and didn't provide the wealth of selections and variety of products that we have today? And so while some jobs do go away, other jobs replace those. And we've seen over the centuries a change from a focus on handwork and manual labor to work that more involves knowledge and knowledge workers. And your reference to the coronavirus pandemic kind of bears that out, because for those workers who were able to work from home, they were able to work from home because of the developments in the technology and learn that they could do even more than they expected, even without having a physical presence. So I view the technology development involved with robots as very positive, and I see three primary areas where robotics will change the nature of work. One of which is
hopefully not. One of them is not radio host. I'm really hopeful about that one, Phil.
No, I think that your job is secure, Doug, because there are just certain aspects of the human condition and the ability to have comments and thoughts about current events that can't really be automated today. But, in 100 years, and I don't think that you or I are going to have to worry about that, there may be changes. But if you get into manufacturing generally, manufacturing since the Industrial Revolution has been mechanized and automated, and now with the inclusion of artificial intelligence to make robots even more capable, many of the dangerous and tedious tasks that people used to have to deal with manually have now been automated. And workers, human beings, and workers in these industries haven't been completely replaced. But some of the jobs that they do have been replaced, and they've been changed and improved. If you think about the strain on the body and industrial accidents and safety, some of the things that robots can do are things that humans had to do, but put themselves at risk. And now you have some other entity that's involved in that particular area. So that's one area, manufacturing.
Exactly. Working with Phil Crowley. He's an attorney. He's been handling legal matters in places like information technology, biomedical, pharmaceutical. A trained physicist. You turn to the law. That could be a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother Oprah. We could do that another time. But I'm reflecting, the areas where this show is playing across Iowa and Illinois. You've got John Deere farming equipment created. You've got Collins Aerospace for avionics and aerospace equipment. You've got Titan Tire and manufactures some of the largest ag tires that are out there. These are all places where I think that what you're talking about is the ability to bring in some sort of robotics has been able to bring in some safety. But you're right, it has actually worked some people out of their jobs simply because of the ability to move things through an assembly line and have a robot make a decision on something using artificial intelligence that it calculates in microseconds that might have taken minutes for a human to take and make an adjustment for.
Well, let me make one point with respect to the use of artificial intelligence. And you mentioned John Deere. If you look at the way, and there are some of the elites on the East Coast who think that farming is simply dropping a seed into the ground and then just watering the seed or waiting for the rain, whereas we know that our farmers today are highly mechanized, highly into information technology. And I was speaking to a friend of mine here on the East Coast who happens to be a farmer and who pointed out to me that on his farm, he had started out with a farm that could grow 100 or so bushels of corn per acre. He's got it well up over 250 bushels of corn per acre. And so, that comes with technology, and that comes with understanding what the land needs. And it's a combination of robotics because, he sits in the tractor, but the tractor uses GPS to figure out where to go. So to a certain extent, Doug, that's like a robot. And what it does is allow our farmers to be among the most productive farmers in the world. And we have a decreasing size of farm-based employees, but an increasing output of material. And the people who are not on the farm are employed in other areas. They have made the choice to do those other things. But it's an improvement for them because it increases choice. So they can make other choices. But I wanted to get to the second area.
And we've got about a minute and a half, so if you could make that point fairly quickly, I'd appreciate it.
I'll speed it up. The second area is in personal services. Think of robots like the ones that clean your floors and clean your house, and then particularly in transportation. Their self-driving vehicles will revolutionize safety on the roads. And I know anybody out there who has seen some really scary things on the roads can appreciate the fact that if you can program a system to drive safely, you can eliminate a lot of the silly things that people do that hurt themselves and hurt others when they're out there driving and they're distracted. So those are, and
especially for us here in the heart of the country. I mean, look, we're at the crossroads of 35 and 80, and really those are two of the biggest interstate movers of heavy equipment and long-haul trucking that you can find anywhere. That's something to be interesting, but at the same time, there are a lot of truckers who are based here as well. Hey, Phil, we need to leave it at that. I need you to tell people where they can find out more about what you do and more about Phil Crowley when they're interested in looking more into whether a robot's going to take over their job.
All right. Well, thank you, Doug. They can reach me at www.crowleylawllc. That's CROWLEYLAWLLC.com. And I have a whole host of free resources and reference materials that they can get to look at technology topics. In addition, we have my newsletter where I have a 3-part series on what comes after the pandemic, which I think they find very interesting.
Phil, appreciate your time. Happy Independence Day to you and yours. Make sure you're being safe. Thank you very much for your time on the Larka Law Group Newsmaker line here on the Simon Conway Show. Doug Wagner with you. Okay, what are some things that you can do? How can you work with your kids to make sure they're getting into an area maybe that doesn't fall into that